you all. We'll do a couple little housekeeping items before we get the rest of the panel up here. If Nikki is out there, come on up. So as Peter said, I'm the Executive Director of New Jersey Future. New Jersey Future is one of the co-hosts today. We're a statewide policy organization focused on better land use decisions that affect development, redevelopment, and preservation. Welcome back from the lunch. I want to also thank our other presenting organizations that everyone chipped in. This was a real team effort to pull this conference together. As you know, no food or drink in the auditorium, and I'm sure if you have it with you, you are hiding it right now, which is good. Don't let us see it. The event is being live streamed, so we'd like to welcome the other 400 plus people from around the country who are joining us via the live stream. And for those who are out there in social media land, we're at #PostSandy. And you can also email your questions during and after the panel to that hashtag, but also to csdforum@ucsusa.org. Also, there was some mention of the Rebuild by Design process this morning. And I don't know if people had a chance to see, but when you go out afterwards, you'll see the Rebuild by Design posters are now here and are out in the lobby, so you'll get a better sense of what that competition is about and how that could have some really positive impacts on New Jersey going forward. So we're here today to talk about planning for the inevitable. This morning, and I hope you all agree, we had a really good and frank discussion about the situation that we're in. I'm really appreciative of those speakers. We also got a great assessment of some of the risks that we're going to be facing as a state going forward. This afternoon's panel, though, is going to explore how we plan for those risks. And as we all know, planning is really just a process for managing change. And we all know that we love change. We love embracing that as individuals as well as communities. But what planning can do is it can help us face change. And it can do that really by starting out with very tangible information and facts. It gives us a picture of where we are. And then it can help paint a picture of if we continue to do the same things that we're doing right now, this is what we'll end up with. It can also paint a picture of if we change, if we make certain changes, this is the kind of future that we can expect. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about those different kinds of risks and issues that we need to be looking at. What things will look like if we continue to do things the same way, and what a better and brighter future might look like if we plan to do things differently. Today, we are joined by 4 excellent panelists, and I'm going to introduce all 4 of them right now so that we can then just go ahead and move right through each of their presentations. And they have sworn that they will be short presentations. And then afterwards, we'll go and take questions. So first up is going to be Chris Sturm. Chris is the Director of State Policy at New Jersey Future in Trenton. She's worked on policy development and advocacy across a host of issues, including state and regional planning, sustainable infrastructure, and incentives for compact, equitable development and redevelopment. Hold your applause. Next up will be Nikki Sheets. Dr. Nikki Sheets is the Director of the Center for the Urban Environment at the John S. Watson Institute for Public Policy at Thomas Edison State College in Trenton. Dr. Sheets' career has included public interest law and a more recent focus on environmental justice issues, including climate change. Third up will be Alyssa Durman. Alyssa is an organizer with Occupy Sandy, New Jersey, where she helps Sandy survivors navigate their recovery. Alyssa has been a resident of Keansburg for 14 years and is currently a member of the Keansburg EMS department. Our final panelist will be Lisa Aramula. Lisa has been the watershed coordinator for the Jacques Cousteau National Estuarine Research Reserve in Tuckerton, New Jersey, since 2002. Lisa has been working with a variety of partners to develop tools and protocols to help communities understand their risks, plan for those risks, and put adaptation measures into place. So, no further ado, Chris.
But what Sandy showed us is that it has a new dimension. We now have to look into the future to try to understand our risks. Unfortunately, despite the generosity of the federal taxpayers, we don't have enough money to rebuild everything that needs rebuilding. And going forward, governments at all levels are going to have to reorient their planning, their spending, and their regulations to be more resilient. I'm going to walk you through a few planning approaches in New Jersey funded by the federal government, the private sector, and in neighboring states to show how this is being done. The state of New Jersey has three main planning initiatives. There is a $5 million post-Sandy planning assistance grant program available to towns and counties to do all different kinds of planning. The state has given a consortium of 5 or 6 universities $1.3 million to plan for specific protective measures in specific locations. And the state is heavily involved right now in hazard mitigation planning. Federal law requires state and local governments to prepare hazard mitigation plans as a condition of receiving federal disaster aid. These plans look at natural hazards like floods and fires and tornadoes, and they also look at man-made disasters like terrorism, and they assess the risks, and then they come up with mitigation strategies to reduce their impact. Some examples of mitigation strategies in a post-Sandy world are different for different areas. If you look at the red area where there's a lot of infrastructure and investment, it makes sense to put into place even expensive protective measures like seawalls. Places like the yellow zone that are less heavily developed and want to continue to accommodate development can do so through better building codes and designs. Both of these areas benefit from hardening infrastructure and from green infrastructure. And then if you look at places like the one in green that are more vulnerable and less developed, that's where a staged retreat and conservation efforts and buyouts make most sense. So these are all examples of mitigation strategies. New Jersey has a mitigation plan in place at the state level, and it's being updated now for adoption in April. Every county but one has an up-to-date mitigation plan in place, and pretty soon Ocean County will have one too. Towns participate in those planning efforts by attending meetings and signing on, although a handful of municipalities have their own plans. By and large, this body of plans meets the letter of the law, but it really hasn't prepared New Jersey to withstand storms like Irene and Sandy, and there's a lot of room for improvement. A lot of the improvement, some of it is in the emergency response, but a lot of it is fixing bad land use decisions, as has been mentioned earlier. These plans can and should be forward-looking. They need to look forward and incorporate sea level rise with a long-term planning horizon. They also need to be strategic and target areas where buyouts make sense and other places where we can be stronger than the storm, so that we're not elevating homes that are going to be underwater in 20 or 30 years. They need to be integrated with our land use decision-making so that they're reflected in master plans and ordinances and state regulations as well. And they need to be implemented. The projects they recommend need to happen, and for that to occur, municipalities need to be involved every step of the way. So now turning from the state's planning initiatives to a local effort funded by the private sector, the philanthropic sector, in particular the Recovery Fund and the Merck Foundation, picked up from a lesson from Hurricane Katrina, which was that local governments really lack the capacity to manage the recovery and to rebuild. And fortunately for New Jersey Future, they funded us to embed 4 recovery planning managers in hard-hit communities to help those towns develop recovery plans and then implement those plans. And I'm just going to give you a little idea of some of the things our recovery managers are doing. In Seabright and Highlands, which face tremendous flooding risks going forward, our planner is helping those communities envision what kind of future they might have in 2050 and 2100 and what they want it to be. And then they're looking at how land use planning can facilitate that transition. Tuckerton and Little Egg Harbor, like many shore towns, are facing a myriad of offers of help from Stockton State, from Workers Planning Studio, from FEMA, from nonprofits like the Nature Conservancy. Our recovery planning manager is helping those towns coordinate those efforts and align them with community goals. Down in Cumberland County, our recovery manager is providing direct planning assistance. For example, writing redevelopment plans. He's also identifying grant opportunities and helping the towns procure those funds. And he's helping get resiliency projects over the finish line. Now, looking quickly at a couple of our neighbors who face similar risks to New Jersey, New York State has a rising community reconstruction program with $25 million of planning assistance to 100 hard-hit communities. Those communities are required to go through a very prescriptive 8-month planning process where they're using state maps of vulnerability and so on, and a lot of public engagement, at the end of which, this spring, they'll become eligible for $750 million in rebuilding funds. In Maryland, the state has adopted sea level rise projections to provide guidance to local decision makers. They have a Coast Smart Communities initiative that's providing planning tools, technical assistance, and things like that for governments to plan around the risks they face. And recently, the governor signed an executive order to ensure that state facilities and infrastructure will become more resilient over time. So planning is only as good as its implementation, and the two main ways that happens is through spending and through regulation. And it's important to think about the links between these efforts and how they're coordinated. There are a lot of opportunities in New Jersey for us to be smarter than the storm. We've only received a fraction of the federal government money that's coming our way. I think that the decision-making body is really the governor and his Office of Recovery and Rebuilding, and they're very interested in what local governments are experiencing. So for those of you, we all live in New Jersey, or most of us do, work in New Jersey. If your community would benefit from more statewide guidance on the risks that you face, including from sea level rise, or if you would like to see a more strategic approach to elevations and buyouts and so on, if you need more planning resources in your town, or if you're concerned about how hazard mitigation is happening and you want more resources to participate fully, let your local officials know about these opportunities and encourage them to communicate with the governor's office. I think this can make a difference.